and welcome to WEDI Bytes, Snackable Health Tech Talks. I'm Sam Holvey, your guide through the fascinating world of healthcare technology, where we explore the latest trends, innovations, and challenges in bite-sized discussions perfect for your busy day. Today, we're diving deep into the world of privacy and security, a vital conversation in our digital age, and we couldn't have asked for a better pair of experts to help us navigate these waters. Joining us is Lesley Berkeyheiser, a leading figure from DirectTrust and a co-chair of the WEDI Privacy and Security Workgroup. Lesley's extensive experience in safeguarding health information ensures we're getting top-tier insights into the world of health data, privacy, and security. And we're equally thrilled to have Adam Forman with us from DAW Systems. Adam's expertise in digital health solutions brings a practical perspective on maintaining the utmost security and compliance. So whether you're a healthcare professional, tech enthusiast, or just keen to learn more about the intersection of health and technology, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Welcome, Lesley and Adam.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Doc Who Wasn't, Unmasking the Fraud. I'm one of the senior assessors at DirectTrust. And as an assessor, I have the opportunity to meet with all different kinds of organizations and take a look at privacy, security, cybersecurity, controls, and really compare them against our standards. So I'm very happy today to be able to share this story. I recently conducted a review with DAW Systems, and I'm very happy to have Adam with us to talk about this story. Adam, why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about DAW Systems, please?
Sure. So happy to be here, and thank you both. So our company does electronic prescribing, and we have a software program that we service hospitals, individual providers, group practices. Basically, every specialty can use our application to send prescriptions. And as a part of that, and the sort of nature of this discussion is each provider has to go through identity proofing and be issued what's called a token in order to be able to prescribe controlled substances using our product. And that's sort of the nature of what we're going to be talking about here today in focus, right? But through that experience of selling to our customers, we try to make it as simple as possible for them to sign up. And to that end, we actually have sign-up links that are exposed out into the world. So what happened in this particular case that we'll get into as we go here, but somebody was able to get one of our sign-up links and go through the process and essentially beat our checks and standards for who's signing up through it. So not to get too far down the path here, but that's sort of the nature of it, and that's the nature of the business that we're in, is e-prescribing ultimately.
And that's a good summary, too, of what was happening. We were conducting a review in 2023. That's DirectTrust was conducting the review of DAW Systems. And part of that process is that DAW Systems completes a self-assessment where they're measured against basic standards, HIPAA, high-tech, NIST, cybersecurity framework, et cetera. And then they have to produce their current policies and procedures and implementation evidence. And in doing so, in reviewing these things, which culminates in a day-long policy review meeting together, I saw all kinds of information about the authentication and use of ID.me, and then your ongoing monitoring and what you had to do to find this potential fraud. So tell us more about Scripture software, how it works, and how you were monitoring to find out that something was wrong in the first place.
Yeah, so, well, the software, when a patient is put into the application, the provider using it can call up that patient, select, and I'll go with controlled meds for this discussion, because that's where it came into play. Select a controlled medication such as morphine or Valium or something like that. When they select a controlled med and go to send it to an individual pharmacy, it prompts them with a login, and it says, please log into your authenticated website and then approve your login with that authentication, then you can send it. So I'm sure people on the call are familiar with multi-factor authentication, or the audience is anyway. We have that for controlled prescribing. So every controlled script that gets sent has to go through a two-factor authentication process. But when that is done, the script is able to be sent. Now, predicated on being able to do that is that provider got through identity proofing to start. And that happens when they're first onboarded into the system, where they go through a process where they upload their information. They put in their first name, last name, their MPI number, their state license numbers, to prove who they are, prove that they're licensed. And then it takes them through steps where they actually have to take a picture of their driver's license, front and back, and then a selfie picture, and upload those to our partner with this, which is called ID.me. ID.me then does stuff with their technology to validate that this is a real license. And they also validate that the picture of the person matches the picture on the license. And if everything looks good and is aligned, they allow that person to be quote unquote identity proofed. And we get a response back to our system. And once we have that response back, from that point forward, that provider can prescribe controlled substances. So we consider them identity proofed and authenticated as to who they are using the system from that point forward. Now, some of the checks and balances we have in the system are, of course, any provider logging in has a username and a password to get into the system. And then at the point of prescribing those controlled meds, they have to log into their ID.me account and do the two-factor authentication on a separate device that they have. Then the script goes. So it's all a part of that sort of ecosystem of security that we have from the starting point of an account being set up all the way to the point of a script being sent that gets covered. And that's where the checks and balances are really from that perspective. As a company, we go through the audits with DirectTrust, right? Periodically. And in that, we show that process, and we also show everything behind the scenes that we're doing, from a technology standpoint and a infrastructure and sort of back end standpoint to make sure we're doing everything in compliance. I don't know if you want me to dive just directly into the actual problem we had with this particular case.
Yes, like for this particular instance, what even gave you the idea something was wrong?
So it was actually prompted by a pharmacy. So a pharmacy who had received a controlled prescription thought something was off. And they actually opened a case with the electronic network, who then reached out to us, because every script you can identify where it originated from in terms of which provider, and then also what system it came out of. So there's tracking against pretty much everything to do with the script. When electronic script goes to a pharmacy, there's about 400, I might be exaggerating a little bit, about 400 different points to validate that the XSD, which is basically the format of the script, is correct, but it has the practice information, the provider, the patient's info, the drug info, and obviously which system it came out of. So SureScripts was able to route that concern from the pharmacy directly to us very quickly. And when we looked at it, the script looked formatted fine. Everything looked fine with the account. There was no actual red flags on it other than this pharmacy having a concern. Now, we took another step beyond that, and we actually looked at the prescribing history of this new client. So they had been on for literally 24 hours. And in that time, when we looked at the actual database for this practice, they had sent about 800 prescriptions in the span of 2 hours. Now, I don't know, from my perspective, it's sort of a testament that our product's very easy to use, okay, that they were able to fire this stuff off. But what they literally did is they added 400 patients, and for every single one, they wrote 2 medications, a non-controlled and a controlled. And they sent it to all different pharmacies, but the controlled meds were oxycodone for all of them. And they were able to fire off all of these, and the intent is that they then send somebody out to go pick up and pay for this med and fill it and have it filled to them in some fashion. So when we saw that, we basically immediately took steps to inactivate the account pending a review. And we tried to contact the provider. Provider couldn't be contacted. The phone number for the practice couldn't be reached, and the investigation went on. So from there, we asked ID.me to provide some evidence to their identity proofing to ensure that this was actually the provider. And while they were doing that, before I got their response, I was able to reach out to the provider whose information was actually used. Okay, so all along we're looking at this account thinking this is the real provider. It wasn't. It was somebody had gotten this provider's information and set up an account in our system. And what they went as far as they actually had the provider's real driver's license, and they were able to take their picture and just put it on the driver's license. So they basically photoshopped it, and they were able to beat ID.me's system of checks based on that. Because one of the primary checks ID.me does, as I said, is they look at the driver's license picture and then the actual live picture when they're signing up of the individual signing up. And of course they matched, because all they did was Photoshop the picture on, and it was a real license with real address. It had an actual, it had a 9-digit license number on there that they're checking the individual states to confirm it was correct. So everything worked effectively, except it really wasn't the person. So you may ask, how does somebody get a DEA number, an MPI number, their driver's license? Some of this stuff is available on the dark web, which I've always thought is some mysterious place that doesn't, in fact, totally exist, but it does. It certainly does. So they may have gotten it from there. They may have gotten it from, they know the person, and at some point were able to gain access from some other sign up or whatever it may have been. But NPI numbers in particular, which is actually a foundational requirement to sign up for e-prescribing, that is publicly available. You can go on a website right now, NPI registry, type in any provider's name, and bam, you get back their NPI number, their practice information, and even their state license number. I'm pretty sure the government posts that out because they want the ability for pharmacies to be able to check on licenses and the validity of them. But it gives somebody who's a fraudster, the pretty much 90% of the information they need to sign up for e-prescribing. The only thing that's missing from there is DEA number, but there's other services that can be utilized for that are a bit harder to access, but can still be accessed. In the end, this individual was able to pass all these, sort of validation points that we have in our application, as well as ID.me's, and ultimately be able to prescribe. So when we did finally contact the actual provider and said, hey, we wanted to ask about these scripts you've been sending, they were deer in headlights in that they didn't know what we were talking about because they'd never signed up, and that really brought us down this path. When ID.me finally responded to our request, for an investigation, they provide these reports of, what they looked at and all of that, but they actually sent us a picture of the license that was used. And when I look at it, if anybody's looked at it, as I say, it's a real license. The only thing that triggered us with it was around the edges of where the picture was actually placed on it. There was some little miss. It was really hard to tell. It's nothing that would have been picked up even on a real direct examination. I don't think until we knew after the fact that it was really fraud. So they did a really good job in effectuating that fraud.
And you ended up, I think you mentioned you also ended up talking to the DEA about the process too. We
did, yeah, because we were looking for, one of the things that really, triggered us was all of their licenses, which we rely on, and that you would think, I don't, even social security numbers get posted out in certain fashions, right? But they are protected much more so than these medical licenses are for the providers. So one of the discussions we had with the DEA was around having an identifier that actually would use blockchain technology so that it wouldn't necessarily be posted out, but it would be something that could be certainly registered against a, I don't know, some main registry that would constantly be changing, but have an additional level of validity against it. And to be honest, those conversations are sort of ongoing with them about having some sort of national identifier beyond what is publicly available, and maybe having some more checks and balances around it. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, in response to all this, we've had to make changes internally. That what I just described to you is actually among the first of about, I think the actual number was about 110. There were 110 different accounts that were attempted to be set up. None of them got to the point of what this first fraudster did. We were able to catch all the rest of them. And what we found was there were patterns to the group that was doing this, of how they were setting up the accounts, how they were naming them, the time of day they would sign up, the email addresses that they would use and how they would format the email. So it was things like this. It would say john.johnson.md1@gmail.com. And then the next one would be almost formatted exactly the same way with a different name. So we were able to see patterns like that, and that became part of a fraud check manual that we have now, that where we could catch that stuff. Another main thing that we implemented is every provider that gets set up now goes through a manual check on our side. So we don't rely entirely on this third-party identity proofing anymore. We do our own internal checks, which to make sure the fraudsters don't know about. We don't tell all the checks we do to keep a little bit secret, but there's about seven or eight different things we do for all of them now. And it's been able to curb it completely. Now, SureScripts Network, which is the network that we e-prescribe across, right? If anybody doesn't know, there's sort of the central hub to every script that goes throughout the country. It sends from a system like ours to SureScripts, and then SureScripts onto the destination pharmacy. SureScripts has told us that we were the only company in the country that's been able to stop this dead in its tracks, that every other e-prescribing solution, even EMR, has been hit by what I think is the same group that just, they try in our application. When they failed, they went on to another one. They were able to sign up there until they get stopped in some way and they move on. So fraud has been pretty rampant with electronic prescribing, you know, with the goal of them being able to get these oxycodone scripts, which I think has been the primary solitary medication, that and Adderall, actually. So maybe those two, of what the fraudsters have tried to do, and have been successful though. Some of the e-prescribing and EMR companies say, it's not our fault. We're not the gatekeepers of this. This should be a provider or the DEA tracking this, or the pharmacy stopping it. And some of the applications don't consider it their responsibility to do that, but we don't treat it that way. We don't like being involved with anything untoward at all when it comes to this stuff. So we took it super seriously in the end.
But I thought, as an assessor reviewing your controls, two things that really stood out for me was, one, just the ongoing monitoring. And it's so important. You already had built your infrastructure and your process. You had all those audit trails that you needed to be able to do the monitoring and find this. And the second was that just because we have an outsourced solution, like in this case, ID.me for authentication component, doesn't mean we don't have potential gaps in between what you do and what they do. It's such a lessons learned for organizations handling, producing a process by using third parties or third-party products.
The interesting part of this is that an actual provider who it's really their license sometimes has a lot of difficulty even getting through the process, because there's so many different checkpoints that ID.me is actually doing, right? So I highlighted the license and the checking of the photo, but they also check the phone number is a valid phone number. We have to make sure the email is a valid email, and that the address is an actual address that exists in the world, things like that. So they're doing all these things, and the providers that are legitimate have such a hard time getting through it sometimes, that
because there's so much.
It is so much that they have to do. We were so shocked that somebody was able to beat their process in the end. But as you say, we've set up other controls and we follow that, you know, to this day.
Well, quite a lessons learned, and we so appreciate your sharing this with our group from a privacy, security, cybersecurity perspective. It's just, it's never better than to hear a real life story, and it really means a lot to us. So back to you, Sam.
Up an insightful episode of WEDI Bytes. A huge thank you to Lesley Berkeyheiser and Adam Forman for sharing their expertise and experiences with us today. The conversation does not end here, though. We invite you to learn more about WEDI and join our privacy and security workgroup. Like and follow for more information, resources, and upcoming episodes. Thanks for watching WEDI Bytes.